All right, we are live. All right, what's going on, everybody? So this is Weapon Wheel Podcast episode 107. I originally named it 106.8, but I realized we were getting like way too. This is Weapon Wheel. Oh, I got it. My bad. I realized it was getting way too Kingdom Hearts, so I had to just make this episode 107. So we got a special guest today, and it is Jeremy Dunham, the vice president of Psyonix Studios, who developed Rocket League. What's going on, Jeremy?
Hey man, how's it going?
So thank you for coming. I know you're a busy man now, being the vice president of Psyonix Studios and everything. So
I'm happy to be here. I still remember when we first met a few years ago at E3. So I'm glad to be on here and chat with you again. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it definitely has. Had to book this interview like a few months in advance. So
sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. I know you're busy and everything. So we're going to get right into the questions.
Sure.
And probably going to take some questions from Twitter. If anybody has any questions for Jeremy at the end of all our questions, we'll try to get to some Twitter questions or, write them in the comment section and everything like that. So for anybody who's not familiar with you, because, some people who really pay attention to the industry. But for those who are not, can you just give us a little summary of your career in the gaming industry?
Sure. Would you like me to? I'll start from now and work my way backwards, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now, I am the vice president of all the publishing duties here at Psyonix Studios, and what that means is that I oversee all of our public-facing initiatives, things like esports and community initiatives, public relations, community, things like that, and as well as business development. And a lot of those fun, boring things that a lot of game studios have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. I've been here at the studio for about 3.5 years. I joined about a year before Rocket League came out. And prior to that, I used to work at Zipper Interactive in Seattle area. It was actually in Redmond, where I worked on games like MAG and SOCOM 4 and Unit 13.
Shout out to all the SOCOM lovers.
Yeah, and there are still a lot of them. I still, to this day, I get a lot of messages from people asking when the next SOCOM is going to come out. Fortunately, I don't have any control over that, so I don't know when or if that'll ever happen, but I'd actually like to see one. But when I was at Zipper, I actually had a dual role. I was there as both a senior designer. I did a lot of narrative and world design while I was there, specifically on Unit 13. And then also I was head of communications and their community efforts there as well. So it was, even though it was a larger development studio than Psyonix is now, they didn't have anyone prior to myself that really worked with my kind of background. So that's why I had a dual role. And then prior to that, I was at IGN.com for over a decade. I left to go join Zipper at that time, heading up all of the editorial at IGN, overseeing all of our different channels. But I had started all the way back in 1999 there as an associate contracted editor on IGN Dreamcast. So, in short, I guess I'm just old. But I've learned something new everywhere I've been. I was also in between that Zipper and here. I was at a startup for a little bit over a year and a half, just trying that out. Didn't work out so well. But while I was there, Psyonix though is by far my favorite place to have ever worked. I definitely enjoy working on Rocket League, and I'm just happy to be part of the industry and my job, and it's really a dream come true for me.
Okay, yeah, it definitely sounds good. And I'm a diehard SOCOM specifically 2 fan. I still have the disc. I don't know why I keep it around. I don't got a PS2, but it's like something I can't even let go of.
Oh man, everyone loves SOCOM 2. Even when we released SOCOM 4, people said, "Great, when are you gonna remake SOCOM 2?"
That's what everybody wants, man.
Yeah, that's the favorite.
Right. So what games are you currently playing right now? Like, I'm interested in that.
Well, I actually play quite a bit because I have a bit of OCD. So I spend moments every day playing at least one Xbox game and one PlayStation game, so I can get a trophy and achievement in each.
There you go.
And I've been keeping that streak on Xbox now for almost 4 years without missing one. And on PlayStation, a little over 3 years without missing one. So I play a lot. But right now I'm gearing up for the release of Shadows of War. So I've been playing a lot of Shadow of Mordor.
Okay.
Just to kind of refamiliarize myself with that. And I just like those kind of games. I'm a big fantasy fan, and being able to hop into Middle Earth in a way that I haven't played before. Usually there's retellings of Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, and this one wasn't. So for me, that's kind of a nice way to blow off steam in between a lot of the other games that I play just in short bursts, because I don't have a lot of time like I used to. Mm-hmm. So I spend a good amount of time playing smaller, more condensed experiences, things that I can get in and get out. And some of them are ridiculous, things like Mr. Masagi, which I thought was hilarious and really fun, to some of the old school classic games that they re-released, things like Street Fighter. Play that with my wife a lot. She used to be a competitive fighting game player, so we have lots of debates over what fighting games are best, and
so
a little bit of everything.
Okay, so like Jack Move is our resident trophy whore. Like how many platinums you got, Jack?
98.
So nice. Do you actually chase trophies, or you just like get them as they come?
I chase them for sure, but I focus more on Xbox because I started the achievement hunt really when I was a diehard Xbox player before PS3 had introduced the trophies. So I really kind of built up a score there, and I was kind of focusing on that for a while. But the PS4 was such a good system that kind of triggered that element for me to start doing the same thing on that platform. I don't have, let's see, how many, let me look it up. I'm on True Trophies right now. How many completed games do I have on PlayStation? I've completed 122 games on PlayStation.
Oh, yeah.
And on Xbox, sorry, I'm typing in real time. I know this is exciting.
That's cool.
On True Achievements, I have completed 193 games there.
Okay.
But my gamer score I get a lot of flack for it from friends and family. It's about 200, almost 239,000. I'm on my way there.
Damn.
You're a real gamer.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Totally.
Quite a lot. And on PlayStation, my level's not that high. I'm only like 20, about halfway through level 20. But that's because I focused on Xbox achievements for so long. But I never miss a day. I'm always going to get a trophy in something.
Okay. Cool. So I want to talk about Rocket League for a little bit. So let's go back to the decision to put it on PlayStation Plus, right? Because I'm sure there was a little bit of uncertainty with the studio about it, right? So what exactly went behind that decision to put it on PlayStation Plus, which obviously turned out to be a great decision?
There was a ton of debate about that before we did it. Many meetings, but ultimately it came down to we had a couple of challenges. In a way, Rocket League had already existed before because it was out in 2008 as supersonic acrobatic rocket-powered battle cars.
Right.
Granted, it didn't have the same excellence in physics that Rocket League has, and it didn't look the same visually. It was a much older game, and there's a bit of a different approach. It was still multiplayer focused, but it had a lot more single player mini games, and it was a different game, but it was basically the same in terms of its concept. And so, but we knew that the game was good, and the people that played it would give it a chance because we saw that with the own community that we built up around the original game, and ourselves as a studio and how much we like to play the game internally. But our challenge was we didn't have any marketing money, and because we were a small studio, and everything that we did was to work for hire. At that time, we were developing a game for Square Enix that was in beta called Nosgoth. It was a multiplayer game that was based on the Legacy of Kain series, and 95% of the studio's resources was going to that game. Rocket League was a sort of a passion project that we built on the side for the very small amount of people that weren't involved with the Nosgoth project. And we had a lot of challenges. We didn't have any money to promote it, and we didn't have a brand name to already kind of rest upon, something like you would have in a Grand Theft Auto or an Assassin's Creed. The game wasn't known in large circles. So our number one challenge when you're trying to market a game is to how do you get people in front of it? And at that time, our best bet was to have another company market it for us. And in this case, it was PlayStation. because they spend an enormous amount of time and effort and a good deal of money promoting the PlayStation Plus service. And we knew that if we were to release in that field, that we would be able to hook players once they played it because they could see the quality of the game. We never anticipated the amount of players. We actually set all sorts of records in terms of how many players came in to play the game for PlayStation Plus.
The server crashed too, right? On like.
Oh yeah, immediately.
Mm.
Well, I shouldn't say immediately because we started off pretty good when it started the initial rollout, and I still remember talking to our director of infrastructure, Jared Heck, on the first night. We were talking across the kitchen table, and he said, "Oh, it looks like it's pretty good. Things are stable," and we kind of breathed a sigh of relief, like we anticipated this properly. But then, as it started to roll out into more places later into the night, and eventually into the more popular regions, that turned very, very quickly, and the servers went down because there was such a high demand to play that we had to react. But that was just proof, though, that the strategy worked. The PlayStation Plus idea was the right move, but to your point earlier, it was a really hard decision because when you don't have a lot of money as a game studio and you're resting a lot of your strategy on a big deal such as giving your game away to a certain sect of people without any promise of getting anything back from them long term, or under the potential idea that someone may never buy your game because all of them get it. It's a scary proposition, but we had enough confidence in the game to think that we would definitely net out in a better place than we started, and it worked, and worked much better than we had hoped. But that was the sort of the initial thinking behind it, and why we went that way, and we definitely don't regret it.
Okay. Yeah, it definitely worked out more than I think any other, than it did for any other PS Plus game.
Yeah.
So can you explain exactly how PlayStation Plus works on, like, I guess the money end? Because as far as us gamers see it, we assume Sony is like, we're going to give you this lump sum bag of money and you're going to let us, have this game for free. And then after that, you get to earn your money. Because I assume you're not earning any money. The time is free. You don't get any of those downloads, like no incentive or anything, right? Is that how it works?
I'm actually, we're contractually bound not to be able to talk about it. And the reason that we can't talk about how our PlayStation Plus deal worked is that it's not necessarily the same PlayStation Plus deal that games before us or games after us have.
Right. Okay.
It's something that we actually can't talk. It's why we've never really talked about it publicly. It's because it's just one of those very sensitive issues that it's different from game to game and team to team. But I mean, if you're looking at it at the meta, it definitely wasn't like we did get some money, yes, of course. Everyone always gets some amount of money, but I mean, it wasn't anything like earth-shattering. And it's something it was a risk we were willing to take, regardless, really, of how much it ultimately would have netted us from that net sum in the beginning, because it really. What really matters is that we have faith in the game and that people would come back and still want to play it. And PlayStation was the way to get it out in front of people and to make people aware of it, so that when we simultaneously released it on PC, which in itself was a big debate at the time, we weren't even sure if we'd have that version ready in time. Our team really worked hard and pushed hard to get that done for a day and date launch, so that we have something we could actually sell in a traditional sense. That was key to us having success beyond just PlayStation Plus, especially in that first month when the majority of our PlayStation players are going to come in through that PlayStation Plus deal. So I mean, there are a lot of risks involved, but historically, based on the price of the game and the fact that we had a small team building it, at least we hadn't invested an insane amount of money. It only cost us about really less than $2 million, but we usually sum it to about $2 million lifetime development cost up until the release. Obviously, it's been a lot more to maintain it after that with our servers and other content and bigger teams that we've added to it. But up until the point of release, it was less than $2 million to develop over a series of years. And we're happy with the end result, and hopefully everyone else is too.
So you got to tell us about the bag, because I think this was probably, I have to assume this, from what it cost to develop, this had to be one of the most profitable games like ever. How much has it made in sales like to date now?
A lot.
Because
so, it's the funny thing about talking about how much money you've made. In the beginning, we would do it because we were very proud of our performance and how we were doing it. But there comes a certain point when you start talking about how well a game does, to where it kind of skirts the line from talking about success to it almost coming across as though you're bragging, or you're trying to position yourself in a way that people aren't really that fond of. So we've actually gotten away from talking about what kind of money the game makes at all. And that's why we focus on sort of the community-oriented aspects of the game, how many players we have, the fact that we have had well over 35 million players play the game. And to us, what really stands out more than anything is not necessarily that the game continues to sell either on the DLC level or on the game level itself, but the fact that people keep coming back in larger numbers month over month. We're not losing players like a lot of games do. We just keep adding to our baseline, which is, to us, the most successful metric. So really, we're talking about a $20 game here with $1.99 DLC and even cheaper keys if you buy them in bulk. So I mean, there's really not a huge amount of transactions going on every time you do a single transaction. But lifetime, we think that for us, the main goal was to have a game that was successful enough for us to keep maintaining it. And we're definitely doing that. We're able to grow, and now it's actually growing so fast. And it's been the story since the beginning that we just have to try everything we can just to keep up with the success. We're constantly adding to our team, especially on the engineering and online services side, where we need to get more and more people in place in order to keep a handle on this this monster that's basically kind of sprung out of a small passion project. We're happy to do it, but it's a lot of work.
How much would you say like the studio has grown from the time it released to now? Because I'm sure you had to go on a hiring spree. Like, how much has it grown?
We're almost 3 times the size that we were when we launched the game. When Rocket League shipped, we were at about 36 people, and now we're almost at 100 employees now. We're hovering in that mid-90 range, and a good amount of the people that have been added to the team since then we created an entire online services team. Then that's the size of that team is in double digits. That team didn't exist at all. There wasn't even one person dedicated to solely online services prior to release. It was something that our other engineers, our client engineers, and our production team, who were used to be programmers, helped do prior to release. And then we also, the team that I oversee here at the company was also sprung up out of nothing. I was the only person here at launch who did the duties that I suggested, and now we have an entire team dedicated to esports, to community, to public relations. We have a creative services team that makes all of our graphics and creates our videos. We have a customer service team recently that we introduced that didn't exist. So there are a lot of extra elements that you have to bring in just to support the game of this size, and we're not even close to done. If you were to visit our website now, I don't have it up in front of me, but I think we have something like a dozen open positions right now, and we're going to be adding a lot more in the near future. And they range from everything from the disciplines I just mentioned to other ones that we haven't even talked about yet. Financial layers, bringing in people to manage accounts. We're looking for recruiters because we're hiring so many people. We need more people. By the way, that's not a solicitation to recruiting services. If you're listening, we want our own internal recruiter. We do our own internal recruiting. We prefer that. Just a heads up if you have any ambitious recruiters out there trying to get us to get their service.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting.
I mean, we're growing like crazy. We had to move the whole company out of our old building into a new building. We moved into it right after E3 this year because we ran out of space. At one point, when Rocket League launched, there was an enormous amount of open space in the floor that we had in downtown San Diego, and now the space that we have now spans 2 floors, and it's 4 times the size of the floor that we had in our old building. And we've had serious conversations of, did we go too small? Are we actually going to outgrow this place now?
Damn.
Hopefully we won't. We have about 40,000 square feet to work with in this new place, and hopefully that's enough to sustain us for a while. But we're also confident in the fact that even though the company is growing, we don't grow for the sake of growing. We only fill in the positions we absolutely need or think we need. So we're not going to go crazy and just bring in 30 people of one discipline because we think that makes sense for the time. We're very cognizant of trying to avoid one of the common video game industry trappings of hiring and getting rid of people based on cycles. When we hire people, we want to bring them in for a career. We expect these people to want to stay here for as long as possible and to work on what they want to work on for as long as possible. And so a lot of the way that we approach hiring people is based on that concept. It's one of the reasons that I enjoy working here so much, and that I think a lot of people who are here came here in the first place. We have a very different approach to the traditional industry machine of game development.
Yeah, that's great because they definitely have a feeling of that job security.
Yeah, I think we have one of the highest percentages of homeowners compared to people renting than any developer I'm aware of. Wow. Now, I'm not going to spout a stat because I actually don't know it. I'm speaking anecdotally, but a lot of people here, a good large percentage of people own their own place or plan to buy within the next year, versus most other game development studios where I've been at, where they don't have that level of comfort. They're always on edge about what's going to happen around at the end of the next project. That's not our approach. Obviously, we're not Nirvana. We can't promise unending job security for anyone, but our approach to hiring and our focus on the game and on our employees and the community within the company itself is very important to us.
That's really good. I might need to move then. So Rocket League is one of the first games, I think, this generation that I remember like turned into like a games as a service where you just continue to release, content, expansion and content after content. Mm-hmm. Why did the studio decide to be so aggressive and go that route? Because I think y'all kind of did it before it was, I would say, commonplace in the industry. Now a lot of games are chasing being games as a service, but y'all did it very early. Like, how did y'all make that decision?
Well, I mean, initially it was because that's what we expect. I think that what the expectations of us were from our community and our whole approach from leadership, Dave, our CEO, myself, Corey, who heads up our development side, we are all people who believe in designing a game around community. And what the community wants is what we want to focus on putting in the game and putting it in all of our games, really, and our approach to game design. And if we put ourselves in their shoes, which we do, because not only do we play our own game, but we play lots of other games. It's a studio made up of hardcore gamers. That's what we would expect from games that we like. So we wanted to show people that we were in it from the long haul from the beginning. And you can go back to really, I think even when I spoke with you at E3, I don't know if we spoke about it on camera or not, but even then we were talking about this is something that we plan to get behind and really support. Mm-hmm. Because we saw the proof in our original game, in Battle Cars, that there was a community that would not leave you as long as you supported the game. And even then, when we were speaking to you back in 2015, that was 7 years after the first Battle Cars had come out, and we were still supporting the game then. So it was already ingrained into our company philosophy and approach that we've made this game for people, they're playing it. It wouldn't be right for us to just abandon it after we've gotten X amount of dollars or X amount of players and move on to the next thing. That's why we don't even have plans for Rocket League 2 right now. Right now, we want to get rid of the idea of trying to annualize a game and trying to keep taking money from people that want the next biggest thing. We don't need to do that. They already have the thing we want them to play in front of them, which is Rocket League. Mm-hmm. The best thing we can do as game developers is to make that game better so that they don't have a reason to want a new game. They should be happy with the game they already invested in, that they've already spent time in. We don't want to wipe that all away just because there's an opportunity to make money or to get extra headlines. It's about maintaining the people that you've made a promise to, essentially, by creating a game and maintaining it for as long as possible. And our approach is we're going to do that until people aren't playing it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it was really interesting. Because when I seen the huge success, I was like, yeah, I'm expecting a sequel in like 3 years. That's going to be. I already saw it coming, but then y'all kept on releasing content, and I was like, oh, this is not happening. They're definitely doing this as a service to the community. They don't gotta buy a brand new game. And I don't even think with a game like Rocket League, it's completely necessary to release a brand new game, because everything that you could possibly implement in a new game, you could also do in content releases. So, you know.
Yeah, and to us, that's sort of the way that games should be. Anyway, like, so I don't know what most people's opinion is on it, but just personally speaking, when I buy a game that I'm really passionate about. So in the past, I loved, for example, the Fight Night series, just because I love boxing. It's my favorite sport. I can't get enough of it. I would play Fight Night religiously, and I would always be excited for the competition that I could find online and new features that they would add via DLC. And I'd be fine with buying a new Fight Night whenever it came out, but it always felt to me as a player that just as I had sort of gotten close to mastering the game in my own way, that it was time for me now to learn all new mechanics and change with all these subtleties they brought into the next installment. And in something like that, where it's very identity-based, you have very specific people attached to it. You see this the same thing in Madden and other sports-related games, where you have changing rosters and stats associated with people. That's kind of needed to a certain extent. But as a fan, as someone who liked a very particular style of gameplay, I liked the idea of being able to stick with a certain thing and prove to myself just how good I am at this, and to see if I could get better. And when you annualize a game and you're changing rules and you're changing, you're setting the expectation of your community that they're going to have to stop playing after 10 to 11 months before they have to get ready to buy the next one. You do a lot to really hurt your own competitive scene. You do a lot to really kind of change the mindset. And I think that that's just not the way to go in today's climate. And that's one of the reasons we're big into cross-network play, because we want this game to live on not only on the current systems that it's currently resting on, but also to have the potential to continue on in other systems in the future, whatever they might be, so that we are able to keep Rocket League alive for people, no matter how they're playing or where they're playing from. And it's a really important goal for us.
Good answers.
Definitely good answers. So what's the well, you kind of answered the question already with Rocket. You're not working on Rocket League 2 right now, but is there anything else like that's going on with Psyonix's studio? Any other projects y'all working on?
Every game development studio I've ever worked at always has another project or 2 or 3 or 9 in the pipeline, in the background. We have a prototype team at Psyonix that's always working on new ideas and potential projects, but we haven't announced anything because Rocket League has put us in a position now where we're in no hurry to have to rush anything out. We don't have the need to push something out for the sake of doing it. We can actually take our time and really work out alternative ideas, test things, bounce new ideas off of each other. So we absolutely have lots of concepts that we're working on in various stages of discussion and prototyping, but nothing to announce right now in terms of this is what's coming in after Rocket League. We're taking our time on that, and when the time is right, we'll let everybody know, and hopefully they'll like it the same as they do Rocket League. Even if they like it half as much, we'd be happy.
Got it. Okay. Jack, Jeremy, or Smoothie, I had any questions for right now?
What do I did have one question. This really don't have nothing to do with Rocket League, even though I do love the game, got the platinum in it. Shout out to you for that. But correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you created a podcast Beyond on IGN, right?
Yes, yeah, I did.
Okay, shout out to you for that as well. I was gonna ask you, it's kind of like a two-pronged question. I was gonna ask you, do you still listen to like gaming podcasts, and also have you noticed the influx of a lot of podcasts, because Podcast Beyond was one, like the first one, so yeah, that was pretty much my question.
Yeah, I still listen to them. I don't listen to Podcast Beyond anymore, but that's not a slight against the current version or format of it. It's because when I started Podcast Beyond, it was with Greg and Chris and Jeff Haynes, and we were doing it as sort of just a way to blow off steam. Granted, it was a way to blow off steam that I made mandatory for all the teams, but it was just kind of a way for us to communicate and talk about games in a way we couldn't do at that time, where video was still kind of coming about, and YouTube wasn't as popular as it is. Twitch didn't exist. It was really one of the only avenues outside of writing very long articles to kind of just communicate with our fans and our readers. And so I still have a personal connection to a lot of those guys that I used to work with. So I do listen to Kind of Funny Games daily, every day. still because Greg is a great friend of mine. I hired him. I've watched his career blossom from the time he started until now. And also that was a style that I was used to speaking in myself, and it kind of brings me closer to that group, even though I'm not there. It's kind of a way just to kind of catch up with old friends without having to hop on a plane. And because of my schedule, I can only really listen to about one a day on my way to work and on my way back. And it's only about a half-hour drive for me, so I listen to the first half on the way in and the second half on the way out, and that's about all I have time for. I'll watch some YouTube videos that are kind of podcasty sometimes. Big fan of groups like New Rockstars, and I like Game Ranks a lot. They do a lot of really good stuff. I've actually listened to a couple of your guys' podcasts as well, and I think that they're pretty good. Unfortunately, I don't listen semi-regularly or regularly because of my schedule. But I definitely think that there's a rise of alternate opinions out there, and I think that's one of the big differences between when I was in games media a decade ago and the way that the gaming culture is now, is that there's still a need for games press and sort of that official discussion you'd have from official publications. But I think one of the reasons that gaming has elevated to the point that it is now at such a mainstream level are there's so many tools for people, real game fans of different backgrounds, that are talking about the things they want to talk about without having to worry about page views or what is the hot games, and because we only have a certain amount of staff, we can only cover 20 of those games a month, right? Now you can talk about the things you want to talk about, and you'll find the audience that you're finding, and there are so many ways to listen to it, either through traditional podcasts or watching it on Twitch or YouTube, to even just hanging out in Discord and chatting that way. I mean, there's so many different ways now to talk about games and enjoy games. I think that's really been one of the keys to elevating all of games, and why I still like to at least be a part of it by listening to opinions. Granted, they're opinions that I'm used to hearing because I listen to the same guys for years now. But it's something that I definitely don't see myself stopping anytime soon. And by the way, streaming in general is one of the reasons Rocket League took off as quickly as it did, because
absolutely, yeah.
when the first game came out way back when, like I said, a lot of those things didn't exist. Social media was just sort of like post MySpace, and Twitter and Facebook were on the rise. YouTube was still very young. Twitch didn't exist. We did have in Battle Cards the ability to share a game out or a clip out to YouTube, but it just the timing wasn't right. This time when we came out, anyone could play the game anytime, and if people came to us prior to release and said, "Can I have a code?" I told them, "Yes, of course you can have a code. Please play our game." And hopefully people will enjoy it, and that will get them excited about this game that they aren't playing yet but could soon. And that was actually a big part of our strategy, is just let people see what the game is about. And we let the game speak for itself, and it took over from there. And then without that kind of support from the YouTube streamers and from the Twitch audience, we would not have reached the same kind of overnight reaction that we had this time. And it's really not overnight. Obviously, it was a little bit longer than that, but it was an integral part of Rocket League's success, and will continue to be. We're seeing that with RLCS and all of our other esports stuff that's running on television and on Twitch and other venues.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Yeah, I want to throw a question in real quick.
Sure.
The last time I seen a game get this much like DLC support was probably like Grand Theft Auto. So I was wondering, like, how far or how long do you guys think y'all will keep that up with supporting the game and putting out all this free DLC for people? Because you spoke on earlier about you thinking that's a way to complete the game, and I agree. But how long do you think you guys will be able to keep that up?
As long as we can. I mean, we're right now. So just for example, we had a meeting earlier in the week just going over our plans for all of next year. Mm-hmm. And we already have the next year of content that we would like to include in the game, sort of on the high level, not on a minutia, not piece by piece, but at least a high level of certain content that we want to release over the next year. And then our next steps really is to kind of start breaking that down as to what makes sense to release it, etc. But that's just the next year, and then we obviously are already talking about the year after that as well. And so that's just in content. In terms of features, that's a separate discussion that we're also working on. We have lots of ideas, ways to improve the game, things that we could potentially add. So right now, I can tell you with 100% confidence that we don't have an end date in mind. We plan to keep going as long as it makes sense to go. And from our point of view, making sense is if people are playing the game and they want this stuff, we're going to keep making it and giving them the avenues to experience it. So I would say at the very least, years and years and years before we would consider stepping back. From just personally speaking, the team is really big. We like to hit at least something every quarter or so in the year. And I think you've seen that over the last 2 years. Every 3 months or so, we kind of release either a big new feature or some kind of big new content. We've started to roll out our next kind of the seeds for what we have planned for our next update now. And we're sticking to that plan. It seems to work. The fans seem to like it. And that's we don't see any reason to change it.
That's pretty interesting. The way that how pretty much one game and being that is service based can really run as a business, and with a plan like that, I would see for no end to be in sight with that. Keep it rolling as long as you can, because that would be amazing. You know, there's only very few games that you can name that have that longevity, and usually you find them on PC like World of Warcraft and stuff like that, where they've like survived decades, you know. So that would be awesome to see a game like Rocket League do that, and it definitely has a potential to do that with the climate that it's in. My question for you is that I know you're going to be dropping a Switch version pretty soon, correct?
Yeah, we're targeting the holiday.
Okay, are you guys going like digital with that, or are you going to be releasing a retail version of that as well?
We're definitely releasing it digitally. The retail version is something we're actively exploring, because it's a cartridge based, and it's also the first time we're coming to the platform, so we're still learning a lot about the process on that particular side, especially spinning up. As I mentioned earlier, we're a small team in the beginning that have really just kind of been going over the last 2 years, building up to prepare ourselves to handle the larger logistical tasks. So we don't have anything to announce right now about a retail version. It's definitely something we would like to do, absolutely. We're still waiting for enough information that makes sense to people to tell them about it before we can really get into more than just it's in the plans. But no, it definitely won't be day and date. I can tell you that much for sure.
Yeah, I figured it. I'm sorry about that. But
digital first, retail later. Hopefully, it's in the plans. We think we probably have more information as we get closer to our digital release, though.
Can people expect a sequel?
Well, he said it not now.
Rocket League? Maybe one day, far into the future. But I mean, I look at Rocket League, and so does the rest of the team, as an evergreen game that, just like a World of Warcraft or a Minecraft or basically anything with craft in it, that it's going to be around for as long as people want it to be around. I don't see the need to make another one for the sake of doing it.
I think keep expanding.
Yeah, expanding it for sure is something that we continue to do and plan to do, and we would love to see just how big we can make it. But a lot of that's also driven by the community and the sorts of features they want to see us add. We're actually heavily influenced by the sorts of things that people mention on Twitter and on Reddit and on our own forums, and people, I think, have a lot more influence in the game than they realize. It's very popular to say that in games development. We do what the community wants us to do, but we really do take a lot of what they say to heart, and we try to incorporate those things, sometimes to our own detriment, where a community member will say, "What about this?" And we're like, "Oh, that's in the plans for like 2 quarters from now, but they really seem to want it now. What can we do to happen earlier?" And then we usually kick our own asses and try to find a way to put it in there, but at our own personal sleep schedules.
So I gotta ask you, a real juicy question. I assume you gotta know what they thinking. What is Sony's deal with crossplay? What is their problem?
My question, BG.
What is their problem? I know you know something.
Well, I mean, publicly they've said that that's just not currently within the ecosystem they want to support, right? That for them, it's about focusing on the PlayStation side, and a lot of speculation from people in the media has been that they don't need to do it, right? That they're not doing it because they don't see a need. If that is the reason, I disagree with that, and I think a lot of people do disagree with it. I think that the proof that cross-network play is important is found in all of the games now, including our own, that are incorporating this feature, and it does a lot for individual game communities in more than I think people even realize. So, if for example, Rocket League cross-network play, if we had launched without cross-network play, with PC and PS4 when we first started, I don't think you would have seen the kind of reaction that we had to the game, because you'd have all these people on the PC side enclosed in their own audience. They would not have had access to those millions of players that came in from the PlayStation side that first month, and they wouldn't have had the opportunities to hop into a match as quickly and as easily as they would have otherwise, and they wouldn't have seen the game in the same light that they did see it. And then on the Xbox side, you have the same thing. Every time we launch on a new platform, you're kind of hoping that you have the best possible size of your audience on that platform. But by cross-network, how many people you have at launch is no longer a concern. You can hop in and play with anyone on any platform at any time right off the bat. It alleviates a lot of the concerns you'd have on coming to other platforms. That's part one. Obviously, people who create their own platforms aren't going to find that as a compelling argument to do it. Like, well, that's another reason to buy another platform. But for me, the most compelling reason to do it is because now, regardless of who you are or where you are or your technology level, if you're available to play with each other across multiple platforms, you can do that without having to invest in another version of the game, having to invest in another console or another PC. You don't have to, or a new PC, not another PC, unless there's some kind of great.
We just assume, it's
Sony. 9 PCs. But the key is that you are allowing people the opportunity to play together without a restriction. Now you can start building a community based on a game and a very specific brand, if you will, as opposed to having to go release by release. It elongates the life of your game. It broadens the appeal of your game. And I was always telling people who asked me about it a lot at E3, how would you compare this to something? And to me, I look at it from the cell phones, and I kept using this example of my brother and I. Like, I have an iPhone. My brother has a Samsung Galaxy, and he picks the phone because he likes the features that it has. He likes the size of the phone. He likes the way it feels, and I pick my phone for the same reason. But if you told me I couldn't call him because I don't have a Samsung Galaxy,
right,
I'd be pissed off. I wouldn't think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that we've now reached to a point in terms of accessibility to information, accessibility to entertainment with all the streaming services, everything, that the next logical step is that gamers need accessibility to each other regardless of how they get there. And I do think that this is a victory that will eventually come for the video game industry at large. The key really is for people to get behind it en masse. And what's happened so far is that there have been small pockets of really pro cross-network play every time it kind of comes up here and there. But it's gonna take a sustained conviction from fans to really kind of help push us over the edge to where it's no longer a hurdle. I do believe, honestly, that we are going to get to the day where it's no longer a hurdle. But how long that day is, I don't know. We are going to keep doing our part, though, to make it sooner rather than later. And we do it quite often. I'm sure we're probably pretty annoying by now, but
I mean, I think as long as Sony is dominating the way they will, and then we assume that's what they're just cocky and they're arrogant because they're, blowing out the competition. They're like, nah, we don't need to play with them. We'll play in our own yard. And I feel like unless they get some real competition or they feel threatened, they feel like they don't have to right now. So that's what we assume it is. Sony just being arrogant again.
See, I think if you look at it on a platform by platform basis, fans of a single platform could make that argument. They could say, why would we need to do that if we have the biggest audience and the most systems? But look at it from the other perspective. If you were to take all the other audiences combined that do have the ability to play the cross network, that's a much bigger number. Mm-hmm. People that can play on Xbox and PC and Switch together would outnumber the PlayStation side.
True.
Right? So if you look at it from that perspective, now you're in the minority. Now you're looking at a competitive disadvantage. If I was looking at it objectively and coming in and saying, I have all these systems and here's here is one platform that can't do something all the other platforms can, I would position that as a competitive disadvantage, and you need to support that feature too in order to be competitive with the people that are already doing it.
Right.
So I'll try anything, and I'll say it all to make it happen.
So I got two other questions for you. One is just a play onto what we're already talking about now. Because you've currently, you and the people at Minecraft are like, mastering this cross network thing. Mm-hmm. You first started with the PlayStation PC, and now on Xbox you got, I believe, Xbox PC, Switch, and is it going to be cross platform with Apple, whatever product? I don't know if you're putting it on
Mac or something.
The Mac platform or the, but
actually, so I know you haven't asked your question yet, but just to clarify, it'll be it's right now, if you buy it on Steam, you own it then on Mac too.
Oh, okay.
And on Linux.
Okay.
But really, it's the only officially supported Linux version though is the SteamOS version. Okay. But some of the other Linux platforms will run it okay. But if you buy that one, you have it. So the PC version can play with any platform. PC can play against Xbox or Switch or PlayStation. That's one of the advantages that they have. Obviously, they can't play with all of them at the same time because of the restrictions on the PlayStation side. But they can hop into any of those scenarios. On Xbox, they'll be able to play against PC and Switch. On Switch, it'll be against Xbox and PC. PlayStation can play with PC users only. But that is a form of cross-network. And we definitely appreciated having that at launch, but for us, we believe the next step is true cross-network play with everything. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's right. That's right. I was going to ask you, but you kind of answered the question anyway. I was going to ask you, well, how does that even work? Having that like fork where two platforms can play with each other, but the others can, and it just can't play through that one. But you answered the whole like, well, PC can play with PlayStation and Xbox and Switch can play with all but PlayStation. So I just didn't know how like the game would read like, oh well, this is on PlayStation, so let's block that one out. Or how does that like, how is that determined?
It's basically like if you've ever been to if you've ever seen those old school operator switchboards for telephones from the 1950s.
Yeah,
kind of like the same concept, just not as dated, right? Like certain places can communicate with other places, but the other ones you can just never use that switch. It is as easy as us. I mean, I've mentioned this before, and it's kind of been I know it's been reprinted a lot, but that's because it's true. It's really as easy as for us to go to an internal tool that we've built that lives on a web page, and we check a box, and when the box is checked, it would take about 15 minutes to an hour to populate all the servers worldwide, and boom, every system could play with every system that quickly.
Wow.
And that's really all we're waiting on. We're just waiting on the permission to make that a reality. And in the meantime, we just have to leave that one box unchecked.
That's crazy.
Do it for the culture.
As I'm interested, because I know you said you watched some of our videos. I'm interested as a studio, and on the you've been on the media side, the development side a little bit. How much do gaming studios pay attention to like the average, I guess, YouTube comments, forums, and communities, and the things we say on Twitter? Are people in the studio seeing all of this, or is it kind of like they don't really pay attention too much?
Well, industry-wide, it's hard to speak to because every studio has its own culture. But in the places that I've worked, they're definitely seen. I think it's gained in importance as people have had more of a voice in larger numbers too. So when I was in IGN way back when, we were kind of like the outlet for readers because social media wasn't a thing, right? We were hardcore game fans writing about games for other hardcore game fans, and that was kind of the way that they could live vicariously through us to talk about games because the tools didn't really exist outside of traditional forums. And then by the time you hit the end of the 2000s and into the beginning of the 2010s, as social media really started taking off, and YouTube and podcasts, it became a lot more obvious, a lot more quickly to people that they could now directly communicate with game designers and game developers and programmers and entire teams and companies. And over the last now, I'd say decade, it's become something that's impossible to ignore. And why would you want to ignore it? That's your customer telling you exactly what they think in real time to your face. That's invaluable information. And so it's kind of a silly thing to ignore if there are studios that do it. But here at Psyonix, I don't know if I mentioned this, but we actually have an internal company motto, and it's community first. That is our internal company motto. It's what we tell people when they start. It's when we have our town hall meetings and our other discussions with the company at large. It's about community first. And every design decision we make, every feature that we add, the first question we ask is, does the community want this? Are they going to like this? And if the answer is yes, or hopefully, then we put it in the game and we try to make it as cool. And only then, once we've made that decision, do we then start coming in with the next questions, which is, should we make this free? Usually the answer is yes. Or is this something that would be better suited as DLC? And so we made it really easy on ourselves most of the time and said, if it's a cosmetic edition, we're going to have a mix of free stuff and paid stuff. And hopefully the free stuff outweighs the paid stuff by quite a bit. And then if it's any new game feature, any new map, we're never going to make you pay for it. It's always free, because why would you want to split your audience, take people out of a possible experience that could make them enjoy the game more? I've never understood that approach. It's completely monetarily driven. We don't subscribe to that. Everything that we do is about trying to make the game better. And then if we're going to make money off of the game after people have bought it, it's strictly through cosmetic things and things that do not affect the gameplay. And that's our motto, or in the way that we're approaching it, and it'll never change. It's going to stay that way. That's from beginning to end. That's how Rocket League will always work.
That's definitely a good policy. Smooth, you want to get into the Xbox questions, I guess?
Yeah. All right. So my question for you, because this year, over the last year, we've been blessed to have these mid-gen upgrades with the PlayStation 4 Pro, and now the Xbox One X coming this holiday. I want to know how your team, or if Rocket League will be taking advantage of the new Xbox One X hardware.
Yeah, I will, but not this year. We're slated for next year is when we're going to support the Xbox One X. Microsoft announced it in their press conference at E3. We even took a picture of us celebrating it at the. If you want to go through my boring media, but that's definitely something we're going to do, because our standpoint is we want to support as many things as we can, and because again, our whole idea is let's just get Rocket League out to as many people as possible. So that's definitely something we want to support. The reason it's next year and not this year, though, is for technical reasons. We have a lot on our plate, right? We're building the game as it is now. We're bringing the game out to Switch. We're making a lot of updates to the existing product. We have also announced earlier in the year that we're bringing the game to China as a free-to-play game next year, and that's also a lot of development work. So we have a lot of things going on, and because the Xbox One X upgrade is we're not doing any additional new feature as it is in relation to Rocket League. It's just about making the game look and run better for that platform. It's not something that's the highest priority in comparison to trying to come out on a brand new platform. And it's in terms of getting it out, though, it's definitely going to happen. We'll make an announcement as we get closer to when that's going to when it's actually going to have a date. Probably pretty close to when it actually is about to come out.
Okay. Another question based on your experience on the media side and now on the game development side. How much would you say, like, as far as studios look at game reviews, like looking at as soon as the embargo lifts, do they really pay attention to Metacritic and all the reviews that their games get?
Yeah, they look at it religiously. Like when I first made the dude. So when I first left the media and went to Zipper, the first questions I would get when I got there from dozens of people is, hey, how does it work there? How do you guys review a game? What do you look for? What do you like? Tell me all about why you guys said this or didn't say this. And whenever a review for anything comes out, you better believe people are looking at it, because even though it's not the same as a conversation where you have your fans telling you in Reddit or something similar that they like or dislike the game, there's a bit of officiality to this, because now you're looking at a score where someone for all time is saying your game is worth this. And I think that there's still a very strong psychological attachment to something like that. And people want to know. They want to know if they're good enough in the eyes of people who have reviewed all these other games. I think it's a sort of a basic human expectation. So yeah, we read them. Lots of people read them, and we mull over them and we talk about them. I feel like I'm a bit of an advantage than most because I was on the media side for so long. So I know that really they're easy to overanalyze, and what it comes down to is what kind of score you get and what kind of approach you get is really based on the reviewer, right? Is the reviewer who reviewed your game someone who likes the genre, is unfamiliar with the genre, or doesn't like the genre? Is it someone who is a newer writer who's just sort of kind of getting their chops right now, or are they a veteran who's seen many, many games across many, many genres before yours? Did they have a fast deadline? Did they have a short deadline? Did they play all the modes, or did they only play some of the modes? There are so many different factors that go into a review that it's really it can get really easy to obsess over the details, and really it just comes down to the individual who reviewed the game. And even scores, right? When I was at IGN, people would compare GameSpot and IGN scores and say, hey, IGN, you score higher than GameSpot. Why do you do that? Is it because you guys are easier on games? And the answer is no. It's because our scores actually had different meanings. And that's the other thing, is you lack the context when you look at something like a Metacritic or something similar of what a score means to a particular publication. So, for example, when I worked they've changed the rating system since then, so I'm dating myself a little bit. But when I was at IGN, an 8 to an 8.4 meant that the game was impressive, and an 8.5 to 8.9 meant the game was great. Those were the descriptors we had. During that same time, GameSpot, their ratings were 8 to right before 9s were considered great. So for them, the moniker of great had a lower score associated with it than ours did. So by default, if we both thought a game was great, their score was going to be lower than ours, simply by the explanation of what that score meant. And that's the kind of minutia that you're dealing with when you look at reviews in sort of the meta. And I mean, I could talk about this forever, and it's boring. But that's the sort of approach that every publication takes. Everyone's different. Everyone has their own likes and dislikes and personal history, and sometimes it's a crapshoot, and other times you have someone who really cares about the game a lot, who might really spend a lot of time on it, and other times you might have someone who just got assigned that day and didn't give it the time it needed. So it's really hard to say, but regardless, everyone will obsess over what they get and love the high scores and hate the low scores. That's just the nature of the beast.
Because we don't really get to hear or see any reaction from developers once reviews are released. They don't say anything, so it's like we almost assume like I guess they don't care, or they just keep silent for some reason. So I always wondered, do they really care? So that's
the reason devs keep silent on reviews, unless they're fantastic, is because do you really want to put yourself in a position where you could be viewed, if you're like, let's say you're criticizing a review, right? Do you really want to put yourself in a position, especially if you're someone at a company who is not normally a spokesperson, where you say something about someone else's criticism about your game, where you open yourself up for more criticism, or perhaps your reaction is read the wrong way or misinterpreted? Or maybe it's not misinterpreted and someone is upset about something and just lashing out emotionally. So it makes a lot more sense just to not react at all and just let people do what they're going to do. I think the ultimate, really in my opinion, the ultimate proof that a game is really good or not is what kind of community does it have? How long was it played for? Do people keep coming back to it? Do they still talk about it? Is it still part of a conversation? Do people want to see follow-ups? Do they remember characters or moments or any of these other things that really stand out? Did it change their perception of the game industry or their personal love for the hobby? Those are the things that really matter. The review scores and reviews themselves are little moments, snippets in time. But just go back and read World of Warcraft launch reviews. You're going to see a range between 7s to 9s, maybe a few 10s, maybe even a few 6s. But that game that was reviewed then is nowhere near the same game that's reviewed now, and if it were to be reviewed. And the same can be said for Rocket League and several other games who have now become much bigger than what they initially were and have made changes. And so you can't put too much stock in them in the long term, but it is impossible to ignore that they have a profound psychological effect on people and can sometimes influence whether or not someone buys your game, simply because they look at the score and the score alone and don't necessarily read the text and just use that as sort of like the jumping off point. But it's not something that's worth obsessing over.
Right, right. Okay, definitely insightful. Now this is a two-part question, right? Frame rate and resolution, which I'm sure you've seen has been a big thing this generation. So what do you think about the gaming industry, you know, basically chasing 4K, right?
Yeah.
And also from a development standpoint, and we've talked about this on this podcast, we've debated it. When a studio is making a game,
Mm-hmm.
right, do they kind of just build the game and then later on in the process, they decide, okay, what stable frame rate can we run this game at? Or is it like prioritized before, we need this game to run at this frame rate and then build the game around that? Like, how does that go?
It depends on the era and the genre. So right now, looking at the current standards needed to make a modern game, most game studios are going to say from the outset, we want our game to run in the highest possible resolution at the highest possible frame rate, simply to seem competitive and to make sure that they're not looked at as inferior because they can't be as good as another game. I think that's sort of like the general approach. Now, in terms of something like Rocket League, frame rate is incredibly important because the difference between playing Rocket League at 30 frames and 60 frames can make all the difference between scoring consistently and effectively to not. And if you're playing with someone who's running the game on, let's say, a super high-end PC who's running at more than 60, against someone who's playing the game on a platform where we can only do it at 30 frames or whatnot, that person is an extreme advantage over the other because they simply can't see the same thing the other person is seeing or react as quickly, and it can hinder the gameplay. And so you also have to kind of weigh the importance of frame rate and how it affects your game. If you're to look at something that's more cinematic based, I love the Walking Dead games from Telltale, right? But I mean, I really do. I play the hell out of those. I've played through them multiple times. But I don't care what the frame rate is in that game because it doesn't have any bearing on what I'm doing in that experience. I'm enjoying the story and making my choices. You know, if you told me that I had to play Rocket League at 20 frames per second or 24 because that's just what's possible on the hardware, I'm going to say, no, I don't want to play it. That sucks. So it really depends on a case-by-case basis. In general, though, most game developers are usually fall into kind of two major buckets, and this is a generalization I think that may or may not be received well. But the two general buckets are you either have the tech heads or you have the passionate artists, right? And both of them have different goals, but both of those groups really want to get the most of their field. The tech heads definitely want to make sure that they use the best technology, get the best performance, can do all sorts of really cool technological feats. And the artists want to make sure that things look as great as possible, that it's as close to the artistic vision as possible. And there's a lot of overlap there. When you're talking about something like how beautiful a game is, frame rate has a lot to do with that. So, and as does 4K and eventually 8K. And these are all things that I think definitely are important in the video game industry, and it's not going to change, I don't think, anytime soon until we get to a point to where frames are either feel like they're either realistic or expected, or they're not. I think that eventually we're going to get to a point to where it's just, was it fluid? Yes. Was it stuttery? Yes. And that's the only determining factor. But we're not there yet. Right now, we're obsessed over at least specific minimum benchmarks.
Got you. Okay. So with you obviously being around games all the time, do you ever get fatigued since video games is kind of your career? Does it ever bother you that you want to go home and, maybe play a game, but you spent the whole day maybe working on a game or just around games? Do you ever get tired?
No. I think if you love something, it doesn't matter what it is. You can want to take breaks. You can feel like not doing something right now, but I don't think that's the same as getting tired of it. Like I've never said I'm done with games. I just need to step away and not play games for a while. It's never happened to me. I work all day long, sometimes over the weekends, and yet I still find time to get those achievements and trophies I mentioned, or to go in and play something new because that's just what I'm passionate about. And I think that if you reach a point to where you need time away from something you love, that's a bit of a warning sign that maybe you don't love it as much as you used to, or you're focusing on the wrong things and within that hobby or that particular passion. So for luckily for me, that's never happened. I've definitely known many people throughout my almost 20 years in the video game industry that have gotten burned out in games, and that's always saddened me to see it, because I'll remember those people when they were super passionate and excited about things, and then just see that they don't want to do it anymore because they've either worked too much or they've just done the same thing for so long that they've grown bored of it. Luckily, on my side, it hasn't happened, and if it ever does, that'll be a very sad day in my life. But right now, I love games. I was up till 3 a.m. last night playing games, so there's no stopping that for me right now.
Right, because for me, I know anytime I get tired of a game, it's usually the genre. I can get tired of a genre for a while, and then I realize I just need to play a different genre, and then like first-person shooters, it happens with me a lot. Like if I play, I guess I have a low tolerance for them. If I play like maybe 2 or 3 first-person shooter games in a row, I don't want to play one for like 6 months. So
right.
But if I play a different genre, then I'm good again.
What was the last first-person shooter that you played?
Man, what was it? I mean, I played the beta or the demo of Destiny 2, but that was pretty much it. The last one, I don't know. I played the Doom. I know I got tired of Doom. I actually didn't beat Doom because I got so tired of it. I can't.
You're gonna go back and play another one eventually?
Well, Battlefield, yeah. I actually did play I played a lot of Battlefield 1, and I did like Titanfall 2. So, yeah, I think Battlefield 1 probably.
And do you think you're gonna go back and play another one eventually?
Oh yeah, the next one I'm looking forward to is Wolfenstein 2. Absolutely, I'm looking forward to that.
So you see, you're not really tired of it permanently, though. It's just kind of like, you know what? I've had enough of this. I want to move on. And I think that's totally natural. That's happened to me a few times, but I've never grown tired of playing games on the whole. I think that would be a really bad thing. That's like a whole existential life crisis there.
Right. Yeah, it's usually just temporary.
Yeah.
Let me see what else I got. Anybody got any questions?
Yeah, I got one. He kind of pretty much answered it, but I just want to get a little bit more detailed. I would like to know, with everything that's going on right now, with all of these games coming out that's online based, pretty much like Rocket League, you pretty much said how you feel about the DLC for your game, but how do you feel about the industry on whole changing and people wanting to do more microtransactions in these loot crates?
That's a really complicated question, because I think everyone has approached it in a different way. So I think there are really bad ways to do it. And I think there are good ways to do it. And I think, for example, our crates, I think we're doing them in the right way. We can turn them off entirely if you don't want to deal with them.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
And so the first time it ever shows up, if you don't like it, there's a window that pops up that says, I don't want these, go away. And you can just ignore it. And then if you ever want to turn it back on, you can go to, or if you have them on, you want to turn them off, you can go to the options menu and shut them off there. So if you want to make sure that it's not part of your experience at all, we let you shut it off. And I think that that's one of the important elements that is important to people. Some people are for it and some people are against it. And I think there are a lot of valid arguments on all sides that can be made for why you should or shouldn't do it. And I think that there are a lot of other things that people kind of focus on in terms of those kind of systems that are rightly skeptical. Like, when you lock something that improves your gameplay behind an RNG crate, I don't think that is a good service for the player, because at that point you're now preying on their will to win in order to further their ability to improve in your game, and trying to get them to buy their way to success. That's why all of our DLC, regardless if it's within a crate or if it's a regular DLC that's bought in a standard way, is all cosmetic, because you either like it or you don't. And that's also why we have a trading system. You can trade something with another player if you want, if that's what you want, so that if there's something out there that you didn't get, you have a way to get it. But we also don't let you go to the Steam forums, for example, and sell your stuff. That's against our terms of service. We don't believe in it. We keep trading to items only within our own ecosystem. And so it's very, and you can't trade across platform either. So you have to make the right decisions. And even those steps that I just mentioned, while we Psyonix think that that's a good system, there are lots of people out there that would say, no, the fact that the system exists at all, we don't agree with, and that's bad.
Right.
And we understand that, but that's not the decision that we decided to go with. We decided to go in the direction we did and tried to make it as easy as possible for people to ignore it or not use it if they don't want to, and to ensure that anything that we put in our system wasn't reliant on improving your game in any way. That's one of the reasons we think Rocket League is so successful, is because when you see someone win or lose, whatever's happening on that field is a reflection of them. There's no special power, no special ability. No car hits harder than another or goes faster than another one. You're seeing a real one-to-one reflection of that person's skill, which is why we think that we're one of the very few actual sports within video games. Not as a buzzword, but you're seeing an actual representation of the person playing right now and what they're capable of. Not because they didn't unlock any special move. They don't know. They're not exploiting any animation. It's all them, and that's what true sport is, and that's what's most important to us.
Good answer.
A lot of the questions I'm asking you, because I want to like get the truth about a lot of gaming industry myths. Do review score incentives really exist, that studio employees get paid more if their games score a certain get a certain score or higher?
I have heard that exists. It's never existed at any studio I've worked at, and it absolutely does not exist, nor will ever exist at Psyonix.
Okay, because there's narrative all over the internet that like some developers are pissed if they average like below a 75 on Metacritic because they won't get a bonus or something. I'm like, I always wondered if it's true or not, because we didn't have any solid evidence ever.
Yeah, I've heard the same things, right? I've heard the same things, and I wouldn't doubt that that's real. I think that makes a lot of sense, that would be somewhere out there. I think that it's I've heard it enough times to believe it, but I've never personally seen that happen. It wasn't that way at Zipper. It wasn't that way here at Psyonix. I only worked at that other startup, and we didn't have any money to do anything, so we were just happy that we got a game out. We didn't even care about review scores there. It was like, did we make it? Success.
All the info.
Yeah.
Do you, as far as Psyonix goes, with this big success of Rocket League, you obviously got a lot of more resources, manpower, and everything like that, and money. Did that change the decision on maybe if y'all want to work on maybe AAA projects or stick to smaller projects?
Yeah, absolutely did. The number one thing that it influenced was whether or not we had to make products for anything else, or I should say for anyone else. Prior to Rocket League, a good portion of Psyonix's development history was making projects for other larger publishers. So we did Nosgoth, like I mentioned earlier. We also, way back when, did developed the multiplayer for the Bulletstorm game. We helped design the first vehicle level in the original Gears of War. So I mean, there are a lot. We did a lot of vehicle design on Unreal Tournament 2003 and 2004. I'm sorry, UT3 in 2004. There are lots of things for other people that we did. And prior to Rocket League, there were only 2 released games that Psyonix had done on our own, and that was the first Battle Cards, and then Arc Squadron, which was a mobile game that we did in 2012. And other than that, it was always a project for someone else. And now, because of Rocket League, we can do our own thing. We don't ever have to do anything for anyone else. It doesn't mean we won't or couldn't entertain that idea. But right now, it's not something that we have to do or are driven to do. We can do our own thing. And I think that the double-edged sword of that is Rocket League has been so successful and so interesting that then there's kind of a lot of pressure you can put on yourself on something like that. Is like, how do you follow up Rocket League with a different game at all? It's automatically, it will be automatically compared to whatever that new game is going to be. You're going to have a lot of questions about how good that game is in comparison to other games in that same genre, and whether or not it has that same hook that Rocket League does. There's a lot of pressures that come with that next project. And rather than obsess over it, we just decided that whatever that next project would be, it doesn't matter. As long as we're happy with the sort of thing that we're putting together, that's all that matters to us. We've proven that we can find success with Rocket League, and that we made something people like, and that actually, in a way, is freeing on the opposite side, because it now gives you a little bit more opportunity to experiment with something different if you wanted to. So we've gone back and forth about the sorts of projects that we would do next and how we would approach them and what it could mean. But I mean, ultimately, it really comes down to, what's that game? Is it fun? Do people like it? And if it's less successful or more successful than Rocket League, does it really matter that much? I don't think so. I think what matters is, do the people who play it like it? Are we happy as developers? Really, that should be what people focus on.
What's your game of the year so far, if you had to choose one right now?
Rocket League.
There you go.
That's self-promotion?
Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to think about it, because a lot of the games I play, I'm usually really behind when they actually release, because of the way that my schedule works. I usually don't get to games until months after they're released. So, for example, my favorite PlayStation 4 game after Rocket League, and I'll remove that from the equation entirely because I'm biased, is Until Dawn. Right? I loved that game. I thought that was a fantastic game because I'm a horror fan, and I used to, when I was a designer, I was a narrative designer, so I wrote stories for a living. I was a writer for a long time. I just like stories. But I didn't play Until Dawn until I think 4 or 5 months after it came out, when I was on a holiday break, and I could finally just take the time to sit down and play it. And that's sort of the cadence that I have to play everything else. I mentioned earlier I was playing Shadows of Mordor. I mean, that game came out years ago, and I'm just now, in the last month or so, sitting down to really kind of experience it beyond, similar to what you would experience at E3, you know, a 30-minute, 1-hour trip with it years ago, and then I haven't touched it since. This is the first time I've really gotten to sit down and enjoy that game at length, and that's sort of how I have to play games these days, unfortunately. But it also means that when I do play them, I have a lot more fun, because now I'm focused on the one game I have to do. It's not like the media days where I had to play so many different games and review them, and I was just like nonstop playing every game under the sun, good, bad, and ugly, where I just had to plow through them as quickly as I can. Now I can actually take my time and play the ones I only feel like playing. I don't have to do something simply because it needs a review or whatever.
Okay. Just a few more questions. So they're not going to let me get away with this in the comment section. They definitely want me to ask this.
Okay.
The Rocket League Esports League, like, how much has that impressed you, just seeing the incredible stuff, like the high level stuff players have done? Did y'all ever predict people would be doing those type of stunts on a professional level? And what do you think about esports possibly being at the Olympics? Two-part question.
Well, I really hope esports are at the Olympics, and I think the Rocket League would be a game that would make a lot of sense there. I think it would, as I mentioned earlier, it's a really true representation of the person playing it. And so I think if they're looking for the epitome of an actual sport in video game form, Rocket League is it. So I'll get behind that initiative all day long, a million times. As far as what people can do in the game, no, we knew that they could do some of the things because we saw it in battle cars. But the high level of play and the crazy things that people pull off go well beyond what we had imagined for even the just turtling, right? Turtling is something that wasn't actively thought of until the beta period. We were running our PC beta. They saw that it was a thing and people could actually do it really well, and we incorporated even tracking that stat into the game. But that was late in that development process, and just seeing how styles have evolved over time. They've gone from kind of everyone rushing for the ball at once in those early days, that then not too long after, everyone started hanging back, trying to be more strategic. Then you had all these kind of you had the freestylers start coming out. You have all these different approaches to the game where different styles are emerging, much as you would see in other sports where people have tendencies to go fast or to go more aggressively. It's really interesting to see evolve over time, and then watch people react to each other's new strategies. And that's one of the things that's fascinating about Rocket League Esports is, as these new strategies and techniques are developed, there are new counter techniques and strategies being developed, and it's happening at such a high level and in real time and right in front of you that it's almost mind-blowing. And the best thing about it is, unlike a lot of the other games that that are out there that are on TV or streaming as an esport, you don't have to worry about a bunch of information being thrown at you. I mean, you just know you're either scoring or you're not, and you can focus on really cool individual abilities without any prior knowledge about how the game works or how it's supposed to work. For us, it's been amazing, the fact that we keep getting more and more opportunity as an esport between our Universal Open on television. We were at the X Games for ESPN. The Rocket League Championship Series has been a big success for us. We get more viewers tuning in to watch it every time. We keep selling more seats to watch it in person. Every time we go to an event, we're going to bigger and bigger venues. More and more people are interested in it. To us, that is sort of the ultimate confirmation that the game is working and that people are happy with it and that they want to get better, and that people want to watch it too. And the fact that people are fine to watch a video game rather than play it, I think says a lot about just how fun that game actually is. And we couldn't be prouder.
Right. Smooth, Jack, Jimmy, any questions? Any last questions?
No, I got all mine as well.
No, go.
Everybody. Maybe we could take like maybe one more comment section, if we can get one more good question from the comment section, and then we're gonna let Jeremy get out of here. But Jeremy, in the meantime, definitely appreciate you coming on.
No problem.
It was good. Thank you for dispelling and telling us, the truth about a lot of video game industry myths and everything like that.
Sure thing.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that. Definitely hope to see you again. Do you plan to be at the next E3 or any other gaming events in the future?
Yeah, I've been to every E3 over the since 1998, except for 2 of them. Wow. So the chances are pretty strong that I'll be at the next one. And I'm at a few shows here and there. As Rocket League has continued to grow, I travel a little bit less than I used to the game shows, and I let the other team members kind of handle that for us, because they're much better at it than I am, and they have a much better handle on things than I do, and they're just better than me. That's what I'm saying. I'm worthless. But the most important thing, I think, for us is just to make sure that we are going to these events in general and showing people what we have in the works. And I think looking forward in the near future, we're going to be announcing some more stuff for the game very, very soon. And I'm excited to see how people react to that. I think it's be cool. That kid sounds excited, so that's
my bad.
Okay, I think we got like maybe 1.5 more questions. So the time it takes to develop from one platform to a next, like let's say you got the game running, like you obviously had the game running on PlayStation 4 first. How much time goes into getting that game ready for the Xbox One, for example, another platform? How much manpower and hours go into that?
It's actually running on PC first, and then we ported it to PS4, and then finished it on PC. But that's because the tool set was so similar, we were able to do that in a relatively quick amount of time. The Xbox tool set is much, much different than the PS4 tool set, so that required us to go out and get a development studio to help us at Panic Button, to help us get that a more realistic time frame. It would probably been we likely would have been able to do it ourselves if we weren't supporting a live game, but of course we were, so we have to focus on multiple things at once. And the same is true with Switch, and each platform is different. The PC to PS4 development happened concurrently. We started on PC, started moving over to PS4, focused on that for a while, finished both at around the same time. On Xbox, it took several months, and both the external team of Panic Button and several people internally to work on that and get that done in time. And then once that's out, that's another platform you then have to support on top of it. And with Switch, we didn't commit to coming out on Switch to Nintendo until around late March, early April of this year. So it's been, and that's one of the reasons we haven't announced a specific release date, is because we want to make sure that when we announce that release date, that it's accurate and true, and we're not moving it anywhere. We're not going to try to force the team to meet some date that they don't need to, with 2 more weeks to make it between a better running game and a not better running game. But it's a lot of work. I mean, it's not something that is as easy as copying and pasting because of different system architectures, because of different tools that are available to you, different features that are enabled. Even something as simple as like the PlayStation has the ability to change colors on your controller depending on who has the ball. Xbox doesn't have that, right? That's doesn't sound like a big deal, but if you want to support that feature, that's an extra amount of time. Not a lot of time, but the point is that you have to spend now one extra cycle on doing something that you wouldn't have to do on the other platform. And then the Switch brings, of course, its own unique challenges. Has completely different hardware than it does on the other platforms.
Absolutely.
It's handheld, and on top of that, you have to support very popular modes that the fans on Switch want, like tabletop mode and like ad hoc. So those are things that we had to go in and approach and put in the game that we weren't supporting before. But we are very, very confident that the game is going to be running super smooth when it comes out. We just had it at PAX last weekend for the first time. Our feedback was almost universally very, very strong. I think we had like 2 people that were upset that we wouldn't let them change their settings while they're at the show, but that's because we didn't want to mess up the person who had to play after them. But that'll be a feature that is in the final game. And we're psyched. We're actually really pleased at what cycle or what stage we are at this point in the cycle in terms of how well Rocket League is running on Switch. And if we come to another platform, whatever that platform might be in the future, we're going to take the same approach and make sure that it runs well, feels like Rocket League, doesn't make any compromises that hurt the game, and repeat it for as long as we can.
All right. Jeremy, thank you once again for coming through, man. We really appreciate it. It was real informative.
All right, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you guys taking time to talk to me.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you, man. Thank you for that.
No doubt,
Thanks.
no doubt.
Been a pleasure.
Stream viewers, we appreciate y'all coming through to watch. It's been a good show. All right. We'll check y'all later. We out of here. Peace.